A decade on, and the Marikana Massacre continues to leave a stain on South Africa's democracy. As the country prepares to remember those who lost their lives, Marikana, the musical, returns to the South African State Theatre until the 28th of August. The theatre production first premiered in 2014. For more on this, I'm joined by Artistic Director of the State Theatre and the Director and Writer of Marikana, Aubrey Sekhabi. Aubrey, very good evening. Thanks so much for speaking to us. I suppose my first question is, from whose eyes is this story of Marikana told?
Good evening, Hugo. The story of Marikana is the adaptation of a book, We Are Going to Kill Each Other Today, Marikana Story, which was written by Lucas Ledwaba, Sababa Somosamu, Atandi Wesawa, and with photographs by Felix Langamanda and Leon Sadiq and Tandikolo Jika. So it is written from that perspective because the journalists were on the ground when this unfortunate incident happened.
So when we look at a musical such as this, I'd like to imagine that you potentially have varying perspectives or a number of perspectives. Obviously, the journalists that were on the ground would have had some conversation with management of Marikana and obviously the miners themselves.
I think most of it is the journalists had the conversation with the miners, but they also went as far as contacting the families of the miners when they went for funerals and post the massacre. They had conversations with the wives of the families, with those that stayed behind, and also with the miners back in Marikana. So the story is told from that perspective, really using song and dance and drama to tell the story. The book, actually, it is a blow-by-blow account of what happened. So what I had to do as a writer and director was to actually capture that and put it into theater and put it on the stage.
Now, talk to us about some of those conversations. I'd like to imagine that the information you would have picked up in many regards could have been nerve-wracking.
The information was really nerve-breaking. I mean, you get to see the widows that tell you that he was the sole breadwinner. You know, he was supporting 14 of us, or you're just saying, you know, we just gotten married, or we just had a kid and we were planning a future together, and you realize the devastation that this incident left to those that were behind. But you also have those conversations with some of the miners. You get to understand, say for example, you get to understand the story of Mambush Noki. You get to understand where he comes from, that didn't have his father died when his mother was still expecting him. You know that his mother was also killed on the fields because they thought she was a witch. So you're starting to understand the people, not only as those people that we saw being gunned down on the 16th and from the week of the 12th, but you understand that these were people, there were people with families, they had children, they had dreams, they had hopes, and how their hopes have really been crushed.
Now, you talk about Mambush was one of the main characters, and he's been described by media in some instances as a rabble-rouser. Is that what we see in the play?
I think, obviously, the choices that Mavuso Makhabane take, the artistic choices that he made, you get that feeling, because at the end of the day, we were not there. We are being guided by this book and by the journalists that have been so generous to also share the story with us and be there in some of our rehearsals to tell us if we're in the right direction, because they experienced the miners. So I think in terms of artistic choices, we are quite close, but we can never really be that close because we are not there and we haven't met them. But we try and present the work guided by the research that has been done, but guided by the conversations that they had with the miners. So you will get a bit of that. I mean, in songs it tells you, you know, here, you know, I came alone, I didn't bring my parents here, you know, and you get to hear his story when he starts singing and telling that. But you also see how he leads the miners, his communication with the police, and him giving feedback, and the camaraderie that existed between him and the miners. So you find that in the production.
Now, one of the things that I've picked up in doing my research is that while Mambush was not educated, but he was a natural-born leader.
Yes, I mean, they say he was a natural born leader. Even at school, he played football. That's where he got his name from, Mambush, which was named after Mambush Mudau, who played for Mamelodi Sundowns. And so I mean, just conducting those people and leading tells you that he was actually a born leader, and being there and being able to communicate with the police, to be the mediator actually in that instances. So he was actually a leader for those people because he managed to keep them on that copy, to be with them on that copy, and until that fateful day, until that tragedy happened.
Now, Aubrey, you're coming off a 4-year break, but obviously it's been 10 years since Marikana, the commemoration later on this month. Has this impacted your production in any way?
I mean, yeah, you're right that we last did the production in 2017, but since this is we're commemorating 10 years, you find that when we started the production it was around 2014, so it's 8 years later. A lot of the artists were still very young now, but now they have careers in the business. They are more matured. We understand it differently now. But also, we had an opportunity to reflect on it, including myself as a creative, to say maybe these are the areas that we can tighten, and that has really happened. But I think the maturity of the artists you can actually find there, the understanding of it. I mean, it's still a very emotional journey, still a very emotional production, and the actors are affected almost every performance. The emotions are quite high, but I think the professionalism comes through, the maturity comes through. So it has really been exciting to work with this bunch of talented artists, and only we had 1 week to really put it back together. So it only tells you that the guys have really grown and they are professional and they are committed to telling this story, because this is a story of our time. This is living history that we need to capture for generations to come.
Well, I'm intrigued by something you said just now, which is that there's a lot of emotion in all of this. Now, just how are the artists and the cast able to maintain that emotion day to day, obviously, each time that they do this enactment?
I think it's firstly because I think they are professional and they have to do that, but there's a lot of camaraderie among the cast. I mean, they start with prayer almost every day. There's those moments where we are quiet and we're just talking to the work, and we're asking for kindness when we are dealing with this, telling the story of so many lost souls that departed. So it is very emotional. I mean, we can't run away from them, but as professionals, they always have to hold it up almost every day. But every time you go backstage there at the end of the show, you will find that a lot of the artists are really, they break down. So are some of the audiences, or most of the audiences actually, when they see the work, they break down. But I think as professionals, we have to really be there, tell the story, because it's our job to be storytellers and to capture this history. So they fight through almost every day because they have to keep it together. It's about 43 people on stage, and they're carrying pangas, they're carrying tiris, they're all in song. It's very active, it's so physical. So we really have to stay focused, and we keep on staying focused almost every day so that we can tell this story.
Now, what is the common thread in all of this? What is that message that you're putting out there?
I think that obviously, the themes that are being captured there, it's loss, it's grief, it's violence, it's police brutality. But also it's when we put out the work, and when I wrote the work, really it was to encourage conversations and discourse for tolerance, because we cannot kill each other like that again. We should not do that, and we really we presented the work in such a way that you could see that what really went down there is not okay, and it shouldn't be condoned, and we shouldn't, and we want accountability. But at the end of the day, it's something that should never happen again, because youngsters that were kids that were 10 years old in 2012, they are now 20, and that's why we are really doing the work to promote conversations, promote dialogue, because I mean, we acquired our freedom through conversations, through negotiations, and that needs to be something that we carry on doing rather than resorting to violence to try and solve our problems.
And finally, Aubrey, if you just tell us how long is the musical running for, and for those that would like to come and watch, what is the cost of tickets?
It's 150 rands. Over the weekend is 80 rands, Tuesdays and Wednesdays. The productions performs at 8 o'clock every night, Tuesday to Saturday, and at 3 o'clock on Sundays. And there are two matinee performances for school kids on Tuesday and Wednesday. They start at 11.
Well, Aubrey, I certainly look forward to watching that, and thank you for your time this evening. That was Artistic Director at the State Theatre and the Director and Writer of Marikana, Aubrey Sekhabi.